And hello ladies and gentlemen, it is your host, Mono Entertainment, back with another video, or another AP World History Modern AMSCO reading, where today we are reading Chapter 3.4, Comparison in Land-Based Empires. And hopefully all of you guys land on more of my content, and and stay tuned for the rest of the readings, which will be published and out soon. After all, we still have Units 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 to go through. Well, hope you can stick through the rest. Anyways, without further ado, let's dive right in. Quote, "Foreigners appreciate only military power. Thus, they submit to us wholeheartedly and do not dare to despise China once we display our hunting techniques to them." End quote. Qinglong, Emperor of China, 1735. Essential question. By what methods did empires increase their societal and cultural influence from 1450 to 1750. Building and maintaining large land-based empires is a major theme in the period from 1450 to 1750. These empires grew as they incorporated lands they conquered. Their rulers implemented policies to solidify or legitimize their rule over a diverse population. However, the conquered often did not totally assimilate to the life and culture of their conquerors. In some cases, the conquered influenced the conquerors, helping to shape a blended culture. The interconnection of hemispheres also led to blended cultures. And on page 177, underneath the passage I just read, there is an image that is sourced from Wikimedia Commons with the caption, "As part of its conquest of present-day Hungary, the Ottoman Empire under Suleiman I besieged the Habsburg-controlled city of Esztergom in 1543 with the help of French artillery." The figure at the far left is a janissary. Suleiman is on horseback. Continuing on with the reading on page 178. Not all empires were able to maintain their authority. For example, the Gunpowder Empires declined, unable to compete with European trading companies, especially the British, and unable to resolve conflicts of heirs motivated by harem politics. See topic 3.1 or previous video in this playlist. Other factors in the decline included weak or corrupt leadership and failure to keep up with developments in military and naval technology. The expensive armies each empire needed to maintain control placed harsh financial burdens on the peasants and villages in the forms of taxes and other obligations. Religious conflicts also divided and weakened the Gunpowder Empires. A deep religious schism divided Muslims and Hindus in Mughal India, just as a schism divided Sunni Ottomans and Shia Safavids and set the stage for conflict between the present-day countries of Iraq and Iran. Military might. The armies of these land-based empires were well-trained, well-organized, and well-equipped, and well-led. Empires in Eurasia all relied on gunpowder weapons, including large cannons, in support of more traditional cavalry and infantry units. In the Americas, the fierceness of both the Aztec and Incan warriors allowed them to imitate and conquer neighboring territories. Soldiers. In some cases, the rulers of land-based empires developed an elite group of soldiers to use in solidifying their control over their territories. For instance, both the Ottoman Sultan and Safavid Shah used slave soldiers to offset the power of troops who had more loyalty to their tribe or local governor than to the Sultan or Shah. The Janissaries in the Ottoman Empire helped to preserve the power of the Ottoman Sultan, and the Ghulams helped to protect the Safavid Shah from rival clans. Both the Janissaries and the Ghulams were often recruited from minority religions or ethnic groups found within the empires. The Janissaries were often slaves taken from Christian areas of the Ottoman Empire, while the Ghulams came from the Georgian, Armenian, or Circassian populations within the Safavid Empire. The system of taking slaves as part of a blood tax in the Ottoman Empire, this was shown as devshirme, or tribute, was not limited to the Ottomans or Safavids. Aztecs also required slaves or prisoners as part of the tribute offered by conquered states. Warfare. These strong militaries did not prevent conflict among the land-based empires. The Ottoman Empire and Safavid Empire went to war over the territorial claims each had as its borders. However, religion also played a role as an underlying cause of this conflict. The Ottoman Empire was a predominantly Sunni Muslim state, while the Safavids were mainly Shia. Each believed the other to practice a heretical type of Islam and was willing to go to war over the split. Religion was not as important a factor in the conflict between the Safavids and the Mughals as it was in the Ottoman-Safavid War. Instead, control over resources and trade routes in present-day Afghanistan was at the core of the war between these two land-based empires. Two Muslim powers conflicted when Morocco invaded the Songhai Empire in 1591. Moroccan forces sacked the capital of Gao and ended the empire. However, Morocco wasn't able to hold onto all of the Songhai territory. Centralized bureaucracy. Controlling a large area with such diverse populations required land-based empires to establish an organized and centralized bureaucracy. Recruiting bureaucratic elites took several forms. In the Ming and Manchu dynasties of China, the civil service examination system was used to assess the abilities of the members of the scholar gentry who wished to enter government services. In the Ottoman Empire, the devshirme system provided the Sultan with a ready-made pool of civil servants strictly loyal to him, while in the Safavid Empire, the Shah would enlist a class of bureaucrats from the Persian population of the empire known as the Men of the Pen. Underneath the passage I just read, we can see a chart titled Ottoman, Safavid, and Mughal Empires 1450 to 1750. Beginning, let's look at taxes in the Ottoman Empire. Ottoman Empire. Taxes on non-Muslims and then taxes on peasants. Safavid Empire. Taxes. Taxation policies used to encourage adherence to Shia Islam. Mughal Empire. Taxes. Taxes on unbelievers were abolished by Akbar, but reinstated later. Taxes on peasants. Ottoman Empire. Military. Warriors often trained janissaries were granted villages to provide for their subsistence. The military functioned as a dual authority with the central government. Strong navy. Safavid Empire. Military. Warriors were the Kizilbash Turkoman militants who helped establish the empire. Leaders made the military independent of central government. No significant navy. Mughal Empire. Military. Warriors were granted villages to provide their upkeep. Officials known as zamindars made the military independent of central government. Small navy. In the Songhai Empire, the Mansa, a Mandinka word meaning sultan, employed bureaucrats from the scholarly class educated in the schools or madrasas of Timbuktu, while the Incas did not use a dedicated scholarly class to rule their empire as the Ming and Manchus did. They did organize their empire into a federal system of provinces headed by noble states loyal to the emperor. Further, these nobles oversaw a very organized political structure that was divided on the basis of a decimal system. Despite its many similarities to other land empires, the Aztec Empire was less centralized and bureaucratic than the other land empires. The Aztec created a tributary empire and had little to no direct control over the territory. Within the region of Mesoamerica, it kept control over this region through force, fear, and intimidation, rather than through a centralized bureaucracy. Underneath the passage I just read, we can see an image with the source from Wikimedia Commons and the caption, "A portrayal of Aztec warriors from the Florentine Codex, written between 1540 and 1549. Taxation. Some form of taxation of revenue collection was necessary to support the bureaucracy and military of the land-based empires of this period. Taxation took many forms in these empires. Mughal zamindar, tax collection. Mughal empires appointed tax officers or zamindars to collect taxes from the peasant class based on land and production. Ottoman tax farming. Rather than employing government tax annual fixed sums of money for an area to the central government, and then recoup the outlay by collecting money or sellable goods from the residents of the area, Many janissaries were paid their salaries in this manner by collecting more money than they were paid out to the central government. Aztec Tribute lists. As the Aztecs or Mexica formed a tributary empire, the main source of revenue that supported the Aztec noble class and military came from yearly offerings or tributes from the surrounding areas. The lists include whether local product was made or valued, but could also include a demand for people, many of whom became human sacrifices in Aztec religious rituals. Ming collection of hard currency. The Ming Empire, like its predecessors, issued paper currency as a means to facilitate trade and tax collection. However, the use of paper money led to rampant counterfeiting and hyperinflation. The Ming then ordered that all taxes should be paid in the form of rice and later silver coins, known as hard currency. Striving for legitimacy. While the diversity of the populations of the land-based empires was beneficial to the economic and political strength of the empires, ruling over populations that included many ethnicities, religions, and tribal ties was challenging. Therefore, many rulers turned to other than political means to unite their subjects in their loyalty to the state. Rulers used religion, art, and monumental architecture to legitimize their rule. Akbar attempted to a syncretic approach to religion in the Mughal Empire, but he had little success in that area. Underneath that is the final table of the chapter, stating sources of legitimacy and examples. Religion. Examples. Rulers in Islamic empires used references to the title Caliph or successor to the Prophet. European monarchs claimed to divine right that gave the monarch the mandate to rule by the Christian God. Examples: conversion to Islam of Songhai rulers and noble class provides a religious and legal structure to the empire. Aztec Mexica used human sacrifice in religious rituals. Sources of legitimacy, art. Examples: portraits of the Qing Emperor and other high officials, miniature paintings in the Ottoman Empire, financial support of artists by European rulers. Sources of legitimacy, monumental architecture. Examples: mausolea such as the Taj Mahal and mosques in the Mughal Empire. European palaces such as the Palace of Versailles in France and El Escorial in Spain. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the chapter, where I'm certainly not going to lie, that chapter 3.4 really is kind of a summary for 1450 to 1750. The reason I say this is because, well, yes, it is missing quite a lot, like the triangle trade, which is a form of historical process, and a major thing that is used. While also missing the Columbian Exchange and many of those events, it does cover something very important, like land-based empires, religious divides, and more. And also within this chapter, it does also show tax collection. After all, some things certainly can be related to modern day, with certain things with tax collection. However, more on that in a different video. One of the other things too that was covered in this unit that I found interesting was the land-based empires. After all, land-based empires were mainly using gunpowder, and mainly stuck to the land. This is quite the contrast to the maritime empires that were actually in play during this time period as well. This is going to be later demonstrated with Spain, Portugal, the British, the French, and other groups. However, again, more on that in a different unit. Another thing I'd like to say about this as well is that another interesting thing about Unit 3 was the religious divides and how they had played such a major role in changing the ways certain things worked. And also, the religious divides also had affected the political outlook as well. Meanwhile, another thing too about this chapter that I found interesting was how it was very heavily focused on how rulers legitimized power, because ultimately the legitimization of their rule was very important, because ultimately it shows if people don't want me, or if I'm not proved myself to be a good ruler, then no one's going to want me as ruler, and they're wanting me to be gone or something. But basically, that concludes Chapter 3.4 and Unit 3 overall. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please hit the like button, and then hit the subscribe button as well, and then hit the notification bell. You can always unsubscribe if it ever becomes an inconvenience as well. However, ladies and gentlemen, there is more content to be watched with Unit 4 in a different playlist on my channel. However, if you did enjoy, please, again, remember to have a good day, a great night, and then stay safe, stay happy, and stay entertained with other content on my channel right up